Hi, Sally Richards, Raspberry Sky. Thanks for joining the Venue Performance podcast.
Pleasure.
It is a pod. I think, do you have to be, if you're a podcast, do you have to have it on audio as well, don't you? I do all my stuff on video, but I don't know whether.
I thought podcast was just audio with
Yeah.
imagery. So I think this is a vlog
Yeah. Okay.
podcast.
Welcome to the Venue Performance vlog. It's not week 10 though of my cycling vlog.
No, and you're not going to be doing any dancing today. Well, I don't know, actually. We'll see.
No, not unless you, encourage me to. Anyway, unless you donate some more money, which you've already done already. So thank you for that. If I haven't already thanked you, which I have. Anyway, so we've become connected recently. Obviously, we're in the same space of hospitality and performance. So your background is sort of hotel based, but not exclusive to hotels. And obviously I'm looking at performance across the board of hotels and events venues as well. And we've been chatting over the past sort of few weeks and months about some of the challenges that venues face in the old world and obviously going forward into the new world. So I thought we sort of thought it'd be quite good to have one of these and do one of these. So before we sort of dive into a little bit of the detail as to what we think is some of the topics of conversation. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm the managing director of Raspberry Sky. Started the company 15 years ago. Bit of my background is I've held sort of commercial roles in companies in the US and in the UK. I lived in the States for a couple of years. But my background is really working on what I would call the supply and the demand side of the business. So, working for TMCs and GDSs, but also on the hospitality side as well. So we work a lot with companies in the UK and in Europe. When we originally started Raspberry Sky, it was really around trying to educate and help hoteliers all about distribution, which, was the hot button 15 years ago, and then kind of revenue management and pricing. But over the years, it's kind of evolved more into sort of a more commercial strategy, support, project management, and sort of systems procurement. But as you said, Peter, we do work with hotels of all shapes and sizes, but we also work with hostels, service departments, private members clubs, and on the demand side, we work with tour operators, TMCs, GDSs, and technology companies. So really wide, broad sphere of both travel and hospitality.
Crikey. Okay. Well, let me ask another question then. What don't you do? What don't you have?
Do training.
Yeah. Okay.
She says, having been a trainer in her life.
Okay.
We don't really get involved in training. We're not specialists in marketing or sales performance. We don't have a sales team that goes out and represents companies. So our vertical is really around commercial optimization. So quite often what will happen is we'll get a brief from a client. Our briefs tend to be fairly fluid. There tends to be a point of pain in the business. They're either underperforming, or they think their systems aren't quite right, or their organization isn't quite, fit for purpose. So they'll come to us and sort of say, can you help us? Can you help us understand what we should be doing? And so we'll go in and we'll do what we call a commercial review, which is looking at people, system, and process. And that inevitably, helps us to uncover some of the areas where we think there's a duplication of effort. It's very manual. The system isn't optimized. Could be that it's not interfaced. Could be that it's legacy and it's no longer fit for purpose. And also how the business actually operates. So look at the business processes. So we do a lot of work around sitting side by side by people in the business and sort of saying, show me what you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and mapping that out. And then really this helps to identify system inefficiencies and where there's opportunity, for the organization, which is why we kind of umbrella it under commercial review, because it can look at any vertical in the business really. So it could be, can you look at our commercial organization, our sales organization? Could you look at finance? Could you look at revenue? Could you look at marketing? The process is the same.
Yeah.
Whichever vertical you look at.
So you mentioned a lot, and it's not surprising. You mentioned a lot of systems, processes, data. Obviously looking at the data to begin with, and what systems the data is coming from, and that sort of thing. Do you remember? I was just thinking, there used to be a thing we're both showing our age now. Well, I'm showing mine anyway, a bit older than you, I think. But do you remember there was an old process called, an old review called time and motion study.
Oh yes.
Yeah, where you'd have a little person with a clipboard watching what you do, how much time you spent on something, and the motion was what actually are you doing. I think it's more things like manufacturing processes.
Manufacturing, really, yes.
Yeah, but it's the same principle, isn't it? What are people doing, and what are they using to make their decisions? And what are those systems in the modern world, which are tech platforms? And of course the hotel industry, but events venues as well. But let's talk about hotels, because I think that is a particular area of interest, because they've got so many systems, haven't they? There are so many. I'm always amazed that the hotel industry doesn't have one or a few dominant systems players where has all of your data in there, because it's a right old mission.
Yeah, we live in hope, Peter. We live in hope every year that there's going to be some utopia solution that is going to make it really easy to service the customer, understand the customer at every touch point. I think we're getting better at that than we used to, but you're absolutely right. There are so many systems within the hotel operation, and very few of those talk to each other. So, we always say, there's a lot of data at the hotel, but very little intelligence. So, there's a lot of the hotel from the point you book to the point you depart. They have got so much data on you. Yeah, they know how you want to book. They know the price band that you book. The room type. They know what you've had for breakfast. They know what you've had for room service. They know if you like a spa. Did you use rooms? Did you use cleaning, dry cleaning your clothes? Did you they know? Did you use the minibar? They know a lot about you, and yet it is still really difficult to take that information in a single view and use that to delight the customer, either in that experience when they're in property, or to engage with them, to entice them back. So I think that's one of the huge challenges we have, and a lot of companies now are looking at how their property management system, their revenue management system, and their CRM all come together, so that that you can have intelligence about your customers and that's what digitalization has started to push.
Right. Okay. So I was just about to say to you, I mean, there's so many questions there that spring to mind, and we'll try and keep this short, not for our benefits. We could talk about it all day, but for
nobody want to listen.
Exactly. We're rabbiting on, and
let's talk about pigs instead.
Yeah. Okay. I could talk about those all day. Anyway, so how has technology evolved then in the sector? We talk about the time and motion, which is okay. Maybe that's a bad analogy or comparison, because it was more manufacturing. But how in your, dare I say it, relatively long career, I have to say it without being politically correct, so I don't land myself in it saying you're an old bird or something.
Great, now I'm going to definitely make you dance.
Yeah. But how has technology evolved? Because you must have seen a big difference in the data systems since you started.
Yes, when I first started in my career, the internet hadn't really arrived, sort of like the .com, the .com bubble in my early 20s and things like that. So I think what has happened is the whole cloud-based system, so the SaaS-based model. So 5 years ago, a PMS that was cloud was perceived to be a bit of an oddity, and everybody kind of poo-pooed it, and it's not secure. I'm in a secondary location, and my internet broadband isn't great, so why would I want to work on a cloud-based PMS. I don't want downtime. I prefer the box to be in the basement of my hotel where that's where my server is, and everything's secure until you have a flood, and then you realize actually it's and then actually it's not secure at all. So then it moved to sort of hosted environments, and that's kind of been the way the industry has been for years and years. But the cloud-based products and services now are really gaining traction, and I think even companies that historically have been offering hosted solutions have moved to cloud. Thankfully, there are products out there that have never been hosted, and first movers in terms of the cloud space. So I think from a hospitality perspective, cloud PMSs are an absolute godsend, not only because of their commercial model and the way they operate, but also with cloud came this phenomenon of what we call open API. So, the flexibility to be able to interface to multiple third parties very easily and cost effectively. It's not, there are stories, of the past where if you wanted to connect with a third party venue performance, the cost of an interface is 20,000. It's always these big figures that, individual hotels and, couldn't possibly support. So the cloud-based systems have definitely changed the way as an industry that we think. And now most providers have a cloud-based solution for whatever product it is. So, and the digital customer journey part, which is something very close to my heart, which again has been around for several years, but there's been, hadn't been historically a very big uptake in digital, has changed with COVID because, the legislation has said, you've got to be contactless, you've got to, be able to get all this pre-arrival information, etc. So it's forced the hotel community to look at how they can automate and digitalize some of their customer touch points. And that's great because that starts to improve the customer journey. That's not saying that, if you have digital capability, that you don't have the human beings to do that process. But I think what's really important as we move forward is that the customer needs to have choice. And we talk about this a lot, that the level of digitalization in the customer journey will be determined by the type of hotel. So if you're a city centre hotel in London and you've got 200 plus rooms, let's face it, nobody enjoys queuing up for 10, 15 check in. We'd be quite happy, wouldn't we, to just go, as you're in the cab or on the way to the, in the morning, check in, great, got my key, brilliant, I just walk in, dump, corporate traveller. You don't want minimal human touch point, if you're on a business trip. But if you're going away to a country house hotel for a weekend with your wife or family, etc., then actually you might want that, welcome Mr. Heath, lovely to see you again, let me, can I get you a drink while I check you in? Or absolutely, you don't want to have to do that on your phone and then go to your room and not have that experience. So, it's horses for courses. It's, I think the key to all of this is offering it and allowing the customer to choose how they wish to interact. But I think that's the most important thing that's happened. And from discussions I've had recently with some of the, hotel groups like Radisson Hotel Group, and then smaller ones like GLH, who I know in London, they are working on that sort of what I'm calling the golden triangle of PMS, RMS, and CRM together, because that way they can really start to understand how the customer behaves and equally how to communicate with them and what kind of messaging would be important to them.
So I think, that you're absolutely right. Most people will just groan when you think about the checking in process of a hotel, which is just baffling. When you go to you're at a reception desk, it takes ages for them to sort of bash away on their keyboard, and then something squirts out of a printer, and then they staple it, and then they put it in a. So what the hell are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? I've just wasted 20 minutes here, just standing with my, Anyway, yeah, and I suppose that, as you said, the pandemic might be the catalyst for improved systems and processes and experiences. So obviously we've all had an absolutely torrid time of it, and it just, words can't describe the pain that people have experienced. But out of it, there is opportunity, there is development. Classically in recessions is when the most sort of new businesses and innovation kicks off. So have you seen that within your client base, that actually they've used this time, because also it's expensive as well. So at a time when they're hemorrhaging cash, how can they invest in something that is a nice, well, they might see it as a nice to have. Of course, it could give them a massive leg up when they come out, but that's a tricky one, isn't it? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think there are organizations that are, for want of a better term, cash rich, that have good, investors with deep pockets.
Yeah.
We've seen that, with some examples whereby when the hotels have been closed, for instance, that the hotels have invested in, upgrading things like door locks.
Yeah, CapEx stuff.
Like Wi-Fi connection, like all the stuff actually that would be really difficult to do if the hotel was operational.
Boilers.
Yeah.
Heating systems.
You know what I mean? Putting the infrastructure in place so that they can, change the way they interact with the guest outside of COVID. So, but in hotels that don't have the cash, I think a lot of them are taking the opportunity to sort of say, now's the time to look and see whether I have a best-in-class system operation. Is there a way that I can actually save cost? Because some of the newer SaaS-based models are, commercially much more attractive than a hosted solution with a large capex, etc. So I think there's a lot of independent hotels and smaller groups that have taken the time to relook at how their systems work. And if they're not doing that, then I urge them to do that, because whilst there may be some challenges with training and educating people that are furloughed and remote, it's all doable, and all of the vendors are working on remote training like this, and that you can do from home, or if you're not in the office or at the hotel. So yes, I think a lot are looking at it, and I think CRM is becoming more and more important, as you become a sort of a larger organization, that you need to understand your customer better. The days of the email blast going out to everybody in the database on a weekly or monthly, I mean, hopefully those days are over, that it's much more targeted. But.
And how do you see the not bridging the gap, because I don't know whether there is a gap or not, but how do you see the similarities between events venues and hotels? Because obviously a lot of hotels, especially London, they get the events are kind of the kicker for the beds, aren't they? So they're attracting the events to get the beds. So do you see events being a big part of the conversation, and how to manage events as opposed to beds and properties? And do you see that events venues specifically could benefit from some of these processes as well? Because I don't think they're as advanced as the hotel sector in terms of all the things you've spoken about, for example. Some are, but a lot aren't.
Yeah, I think, the little bit of research that we've done in terms of the similarities between the two, I mean, undoubtedly, the hotels are looking to sell the rooms and the meeting space that, or the event space that goes with that. And they certainly, over the last few years, the city centre hotels have started to feel the effect of event-only locations that don't have bedrooms, that may be starting to sort of, when they're in a pitch, it might be that actually they're looking at a couple of other event options that aren't in the hotel space, and that's difficult, for the hotels to get their arms around. But certainly from the initial research I've done, is that the event only market is less dynamic than the hotel part. So where in a let's take a city centre again, city centre hotel, we've got dynamic room pricing, and your bedroom price may, if you've got a revenue management system, may be changing, multiple times a day, every hour, dynamically, etc., because it's looking at the demands of the business and the business on the books, etc. In the event space, they don't have that. So of the, the couple of event venues that I spoke to fairly recently, they were saying, in a hotel, you might have, well, insurmountable in that amount of event, the room inquiries, because they're coming through multiple channels. But in an event with rooms, you probably have, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 150 a week. Whereas, they're having maybe 5 a day, 10 a week, because they have event space that is less dynamic. So they've got less demand coming in. And I think that means resulting in, actually, they're probably where the hotel industry was several years ago. Their pricing is flat. It's much flatter. Whereas in the hotel industry, we're flexing price all the time. We're looking at, you've got your flexible rate, your advanced purchase rate, your rate with meals, without meals, 2-night stay, etc. We're looking at flexing that the whole time. Whereas in the event space, it is really a day delegate kind of rate, and it's flat. It may be seasonal. You may say July and August or summertime, we're going to have weddings. It's going to be more expensive in the summer than it is in the winter, but it's certainly not as dynamic as the hotel industry. And also, they're not mature in terms of the data sets that they're looking at. They're less, from what I can tell, they're less revenue savvy due to the demand and the type of businesses that they are, because they're less dynamic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think your phrase flat and less dynamic. Do you see that changing in the short term and maybe long term? I mean,
yeah, I think if we, when I've looked at the event market and how they measure their business and what tools they have, I guess it takes us back probably 10 plus years in the hotel industry, because we're very fortunate in the hospitality space now, and particularly in the hotel space, is that we have a huge array of third-party entities providing really great benchmark data. So, whether it's a rate shopping tool, whether comp set is really important. So, all revenue management systems really look at your competitive pricing and benchmark against that. But they're also looking at demand coming into market, what your market share is, what your occupancy is, what your ADR is, what your average length of stay is, so they're kind of comparing trends. You can even, for instance, pull reports to say, tell me all the business that's coming into the market from a specific channel. So give me the GDS, give me the corporate business, what's coming into London, what's coming into Manchester, what's coming into Birmingham, or outside of the UK. And then say, am I getting my fair market share? And who's making those bookings? And do I have agreements with those? So we have such an array of, really good data that you can subscribe to, that doesn't seem to be, or isn't available today in the event space. It just doesn't exist, apart from venue performance, obviously.
Well, I was going to say, crikey, where are we going with this one, Sally?
There's nothing useful at all.
Cut. We need to edit that a bit. Until now is what you were just about to say.
Scooping it back, yes. So in terms of venue performance, this is the first time event space can actually look at their comp set market, look at trend, look at historic trends, look at future. This is the first time they have that data. So it's something we take for granted in the hotel space, because it exists and we have it and we use it all the time. And we have, revenue management systems that can suck in all of that data as well and make some informed decisions. But at this point in time, the benchmarking is in its infancy, isn't it, for events?
Yeah, it's only just started. I mean, we've got a big, this isn't about me or venue performance, this is about you. But since you brought it up, Sally, unprompted, or either that or very seamlessly done. Yeah, we've got a roadmap. We've got I've got a did I mention? I think I've mentioned this to you. I've got a BHAG, which do you know what a BHAG is?
That is.
Okay, this is going to get hidden in the vlog, but I'm going to put it out there. So a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Oh.
And I'll give you two examples of BHAGs. One is Bill Gates. So he said, computer in every house in the world.
Yeah.
And everybody went, yeah, all right, Bill, back in your box, mate. You're good, but you're not that good. But actually, people that knew what they were doing, i.e. Bill Gates, could see the future. So he knew what was happening. So he had a vision and a goal of a computer in every, well, actually, he said a PC in every room, didn't he? A PC in every house. Anyway. And you know, we've now got what? You've probably got 4 sitting on your desk. You've got a phone, a watch, you know, a laptop. So we've all got multiple computers in our pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, that wasn't such a big and hairy, audacious goal at the time. And then another one was, I think it was FedEx that did it, which or said it, and theirs was a parcel anywhere in the world within 24 hours. It's either FedEx or UPS. I can't remember which one. I should know this. And everybody went, that's never, how are you going to do that? But of course, they could see the future of logistics and how it was going. So they knew it was possible. But to the outside world, it was a big, ridiculous goal. And I've got a BHAG, a venue performance that has a BHAG, and I'll put it out there. This is the first time I've put it. This is exclusive, Sally. I'm going to create a benchmark, and obviously I offer a benchmarking service, and we offer 20 plus reports. So there's data within our benchmarking platform, and what people can see is the tip of the iceberg. So we know where the market's going. We know the dynamic pricing, bringing in people as opposed to property, as opposed to activity, timeline, channels, as you mentioned, all of those things. You know, I've got it all planned out, and my BHAG is so the narrative in the industry will be, where are you on the venue performance index? A bit like the STR index, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
And it takes all those things into consideration. So I think the benchmarking, you know, we are behind the curve in M&E, and everybody that I speak to knows we're behind the curve, and even hotels that I speak to who are used to benchmarking
don't have it for M&E.
No, don't have it for M&E, which is weird, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. M&E in hotels is kind of a tricky one. Every time we've looked at, you know, maybe streamlining or centralizing or doing something with M&E, the organization always goes, oh, don't touch M&E, because it's kind of like, it's one of those tricky areas of the business where it, you know, you try to make it more efficient, but actually it's so intensive from a human perspective, that actually, whilst there are systems in place that can help, you know, manage the sales process, the touch points and engagement with the corporate planner, the bride, the event organizer, etc. It's really labor intensive, isn't it? So, but I think, you know, at the moment, I would say that event market is pretty blind in terms of understanding the potential of their market, because there isn't any data today. So I know that hoteliers that are in the UK are really interested in your tool, because it helps them to understand the dynamic of the event market for their M&E or their event space. The key now is trying to educate, isn't it? Is the event venues that don't have rooms, is, you know, how are they measuring themselves today? If they're just measuring themselves on their performance and their historic performance, then they're pretty blind, because actually you can't say whether you're performing well or not. All you can say is I'm up and down versus last year. But actually that doesn't, from an owner perspective, that doesn't say we're outperforming the market, we're underperforming in the market, you know, we're getting our fair share. There's none of that measurement today. Until now.
Come on, Sally.
Can't measure it, you can't improve it, which is why venue performance is a really important tool. But yes. It's true though, isn't it? You know,
well, it is. I mean, we are, you know, we're making a little sort of slight, you know, flippancy about it, but it is. I mean, it is important, and but it drives back. You know, this conversation is about your experience over the years, which is largely based on data and what the data is telling you, which is coming from systems. And so the audit that you mentioned, it all, you know, the catalyst or the the sharp end is data, isn't it? What's the data telling us? And from there, we collectively, you in your capacity as an advisor and the venues and the hotels, you can then explore that, and then you'll know where the pain is, because the pain might be, it's like a doctor, isn't it? The pain, got a pain in my elbow, but actually the problem is in your left hip or something, so
Yeah.
you don't know that until you do the diagnostics, and to do that you need the data. So
I think it's about looking at costs and comparing costs. It's about, there's once you, as you say, at the moment, it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you're offering, because there's so much more that you can build on once you've got those sort of foundations in place. But even this tip of the iceberg is more than they have today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives insights that didn't exist before. So if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. If you're blind and you can't see where you are versus market, then arguably the decisions you're making are not particularly commercial, whether they're, whatever those decisions are, whether it's pricing, whether it's resourcing, whether it's, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, we've certainly seen a shift, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, there wasn't, well, I mean, we've been collecting data for a couple of years, since 2018, but in a soft market, in a high tide, I think lots of people call it, don't they? Everybody's kind of, whoo, the tide is high, the wind is up, and we're all having a great time. And then all of a sudden the wind drops and the tide goes out. It's like, oh shit. Yeah. So, okay, to wrap up then, what do you see, or do you see any, apart from hotels and other venues investing more in their data and their analysis and moving more towards a better customer experience and what the data will enable you to do in terms of development there, do you see there being any major shifts either for hotels or for events venues, coming out of the pandemic?
In what respect? What do you mean?
What do you see? Has there been a catalyst? I mean, we talked about the catalyst for events venues. They really do now need to now that there is benchmarking available, they can embrace that and they can make huge advances, just like the hotel industry did 15 years ago. So the hotel industry are in front, not in front of the game. They're ahead of the game when it comes to tech and understanding the customer. What's next for the hotel industry then, do you think?
I think it's further use of technology, and I mentioned this the other day, and people are going to start to think I work for this company, but I really don't. But I watch a lot of webinars, and I don't watch a lot of YouTubes and bits. But somebody introduced me to a company recently called Livit, Livit.
Livit.
Yeah, Livit.
Right.
Benjamin Kalesia, I might have pronounced that incorrectly, but anyway. So this company, this Livit Group, is Spanish. And they work with probably every restaurant you could possibly think of in terms of their design and their operation, etc. And they've spent years working with hotels, and whether it's Domino's Pizza, Pizza Express, or Vapiano, or working with Hilton, or different hotel groups in terms of what the F&B experience is. They gathered a lot of intelligence around that. And they, I believe they have like their own kind of, lab, etc. And they were trying to sell a concept to, restaurants and saying, look, I think you should do this and this. And they were saying, yeah, that's all very well and good, but actually it's a bit out there, it's a little bit, I'm not sure I want to be on the bleeding edge of this. So they've started.
BHAG.
Sorry?
It's a BHAG.
It's a BHAG. Actually, you would love this guy. Anyway, so they thought, fine, well, we will develop our own restaurant called V. And this concept is, and I'll give you the link. You can put it in the blog. But basically, they use technology. So they've got the restaurants that they build are really cost effective to build. So there's already a cost benefit there from investors. But the technology piece is what really interests me. So you can make your reservation, or you don't have to make it. You can reserve your food. You can order your food before you get there. Yeah, on your phone, on the app. And then this place that you're going to is really groovy, funky. It's open for breakfast right the way through till midnight, 2 a.m. So they turn the tables about 8 times a day. And when you arrive, you don't have to go to a hostess. You don't have to say, I've got a reservation or anything. You just walk in, you find your space and you sit. And they will automatically recognize that you have arrived. So your drinks will be with you within 5 minutes of you finding wherever you want to sit, and you sit and they arrive because they know where you are because of your phone. And their philosophy with drinks is really funny actually as well, because they invented drinks or have drinks that are spectacular when they are made and delivered, a cocktail kind of thing. They just look great. And so all of their marketing is done by their customers through Instagram. They go, oh, what an amazing cocktail. Let me take that photo, share. And then the food is really simple. The food isn't exotic. It isn't, it's not 5-star cordon bleu kind of, it's simple, nice, fresh food. A lot of it's around kind of pizzeria kind of thing. So they don't need chefs. So they don't need expensive chefs. They don't need big kitchens. They don't, and then your food arrives really quickly because it comes like 8 minutes after you've had your drink kind of thing, and the staff that they have are trained by station. So, you can work on you can work at doing the drinks, or you can work serving the food. But if you decide to train, actually, I'd like to do the bar, and you can pay, they will pay you extra the more stations that you work with. And you don't have to wear a uniform, and the music they play and the aromas they put across the restaurant, they have direct influence on what you buy and how much you eat and how much you drink and whatever. And it's a scientific phenomenon, but equally groovy, funky, and people love it. So in terms of innovation and inspiration, that is the best thing I think I have seen for a number of years, and really quite exciting.
That's fascinating, isn't it? They tried to sell the platform or the software, and nobody wanted it because it was too out there. So they just did it themselves. I mean, that's really clever. I like that.
Cool. How super cool! But what an interesting company. But so I think from an innovation perspective, and everyone that I shared it with has come back and gone, oh my gosh, that's kind of knocked my socks off. That's where we need to be going. It's not just about just being able to check in on your phone. It's not just about sending email communication to your customer that is relevant. It's that on steroids. It's what's the next thing, and that's the best thing I've seen recently that kind of reflects that, I think.
Yeah, that's a sort of vision of where you think the market.
Space,
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to look that one up. Livet. Where are they mainly based in? I don't know, London.
I think they've got 3 restaurants in the States. I think, like everybody else, I think they had great plans for a larger rollout, but COVID hit, so there's a few things on hold at the moment. But I imagine we, as and when the market picks up, we will definitely be seeing, one in London, and others in the UK and elsewhere.
And then it'll get copied.
It's global, so
fascinating. Okay, well, I'll put that. We'll come back in 6 months' time, and we'll see whether Livet has launched and spread like a.
And we'll record from there.
Japanese knotweed, yes. We'll record from Livet. Let's do that. That's a great idea.
Let's do that. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, nice and creative. I like that. Record from Livet. Live from Livet.
We're living it in Livet. Yeah.
Yeah. Crikey. Right. Good. Okay. Sally, it's brilliant. Loads of ideas actually, for which I suppose that's kind of what you do, isn't it? You give ideas based on what you find and your expertise and your vision as well. I suppose that's the kind of the DNA of Raspberry Sky and your experience. So it's nice to be able to have a little not a teaser, a little sample of inside your mind as to what you do. It's a bit like like a preliminary session of what would happen if you got involved with Sally, which obviously we're going to be doing quite a bit of going forward. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great. I wish you all the best for coming out of lockdown. Are things picking up? Have you other
Yes, I think so. There's definitely more inquiries and more interest coming through. So yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got some dates to work to now, haven't we? So we've got, I think it just makes everybody feel brighter, lighter, and it's enabling organizations to start planning, so yeah, all positive.
Great. Okay. Well, lovely to see you. Thanks very much for your time. And yeah, 6 months' time, we'll be at Livid doing our next one.
We're trying to see how venue performance benchmarking tool can help them.
Yes, exactly. Good point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Pleasure. Lovely
Thanks,
to speak to you, Peter. Thanks very much.
Cheerio. Bye.
Bye.